make sure to send out the link. Perfect. I'm sure you all just heard that the recording is started, and now we can get started with the presentation. All right, so with the Virtual Student Federal Service, we like to say that it's a virtual internship, but the experience is real. So Virtual Student Federal Service got its start over 10 years ago in 2009. Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, was speaking at New York University at their commencement when she first announced VSFS as a way for the State Department to move into the 21st century. That fall, it started with just 40 returning interns for the State Department, going back to offices and projects they had started over the summer. But over the last 10 years, we've grown to include over 50 government agencies with thousands of applicants every year.
Abby, I don't
just
see the presentation.
Can you say that again, Nora?
I don't see the presentation.
Oh my gosh, yes, I have to share my screen. Thank you for reminding me. All right, here we go. So as I mentioned, Virtual Student Federal Service started in 2009 with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announcing it. Over the last few years, it's really grown. This past year, 2019-2020, we've had 54 government agencies partake, including everything from Department of State, Agriculture, Defense Department, National Science, Smithsonian, the Indian Health Service. We had over 600 projects, and we had over 3,000 applicants apply for those. And in the end, about 1,260 of those applicants ended up becoming interns for us. So what exactly is Virtual Student Federal Service? As I'm sure many of you know, it's a virtual internship that students who are U.S. citizens can do with the federal agency of the government. The only requirement, you have to be a student, whether that's undergrad, graduate, postgraduate, or even taking a few classes online. If you define yourself as a student, then you count. Also, we ask that all these students be U.S. citizens. That helps with the legality of the program. These internships run from September through May, the length of an academic year, usually about 10 hours a week, up to the individual project. And one of the best parts is that there are no security clearances, which lets us have a super fast timeline, as you'll see later, from the application to starting your project. So why do students like VSFS? Well, first of all, it's accessible. There's no need to travel to Washington, D.C. for an entire semester or school year. You can complete your internship at school, from the library, the local coffee shop, even your dorm room if you want. And going with that, it's affordable since you can still take your classes and do all of your normal activities while doing this internship. It's flexible. It's only 10 hours of work a week, but you don't have to work from between specific 9 to 5 hours. You can work whenever it's good for you and whenever fits around your classes and extracurriculars. A lot of schools will also work with their students to give course credit. It's not a required part of the program at all. We stay out of it. We let that be between the student and their school. Also, students will get mentorship and networking opportunities by working virtually with the federal government. This way, it's a lot more tangible for virtual stuff than going to a career fair and talking to someone, because you're building up these connections over the course of an academic year. So if you go to vsfs.state.gov, you can click on the projects tab and see all the projects that we've had to offer. These are some of the State Department projects, but as you can see, you can filter by agency, the country that the project is about, the skills or foreign languages that the project asks for, and each project comes with a summary, the number of interns, skills and languages. So as you can see, and as I mentioned earlier, there are over 600 projects, and we really encourage students to try and look at as many of them as they can. You can always filter by your interests. So let's say your students are interested in coding or writing or data analysis. They can filter by that and see the projects that ask for those skills. Then when the students apply in July, they're able to select their top 3 programs. And often we see students select 3 projects from 3 different agencies. The flexibility is up to them. So quickly, I wanted to show you some examples of projects that we've had in the past. So from the Department of Veterans Affairs, we have Is Creativity in Your DNA? This is more of a graphic design, infographic design, more creative projects that they have to use animation and visual storytelling to explain how genes work for veterans and their families to understand. Nora, do you want to talk about how VSFS works at Department of Veterans Affairs?
Sure. Thanks, Abby. I think first of all, before I even say that, just to put VSFS clearly in your minds, when I joined the VSFS team, so VSFS is celebrating its 10th birthday this year, so it's been in existence for a decade. When it started, it was just 40 students and the State Department. So it was 40 in-person interns who then the State Department thought, well, how can we make it so that these students can continue working for us virtually? And that's how it began. In the beginning, if you had Googled, when I joined the Virtual Student Federal Service team, which is a very tiny team, when I joined, if you Googled VSFS, I think somebody's mic is not was turned off. Can you shut everybody's mics, Abby? So when I joined VSFS, if you Googled VSFS, it stood for Victoria's Secret Fashion Show on Google. And now, if you say VSFS into Google, it'll tell you the Virtual Student Federal Service because it's grown so much. So it's across all agencies in the federal government now. We expect, between 50 and 60 agencies to submit projects this May and June, so that in July, when students apply in July, they'll have a myriad of choices. So there's something for everybody, from graphic arts and videographers to data scientists to agricultural projects there's something really for everyone. At the VA uses virtual interns to handle all their social media. So there's a project of the fellow who is our main point of contact with the VA. He always requests 120 virtual interns because they literally handle all social media for all veteran families. And he runs them like military divisions. He's a handicapped former soldier, and he knows how to run a lot of people, and he has he advertises for project coordinators, so people who run teams of students in different activities related to the outreach that the Veterans Affairs does with veteran families. Back to you, Em.
All right, thank you, Nora. Another project we have is with the Indian Health Service. This is more of a policy one, getting an idea of what it's like to work in the government. And I included this on here because before I started helping Nora with VSFS, I had no clue what the Indian Health Service was. And I think it's so cool that one of these federal agencies is able to submit projects and really get its name out there. Another project more on the English side is helping Yemeni students learn English. So this would be an amazing opportunity for an English student or just someone interested in cultural diplomacy to get to interact with students around their age in another country. And finally, we have social and economic sciences funding outcomes by the numbers. This is a data-focused internship where you get to collect, combine, analyze, and visualize data. So that would be good for someone in data science or statistics, or of course, anyone with an interest in that. So the timeline, from May 1st to June 10th, starting in the next few weeks, we'll ask that the mentors submit projects. These mentors will be from the 50 or so government agencies that we've alluded to, and they can submit projects requesting 1 to however many interns they want. They'll write summaries, put in the skills, and submit the projects. Then from July 1st to 31st, students can apply on USA Jobs for these VSFS internships. we encourage students to create their USA Jobs account before, because it is a bit of a lengthy process. It's more involved than a lot of other job applications. But I know when I went through the process, I thought it was a bit of an equalizer, because it didn't matter what my resume looked like or what information was on my resume, because we all had to give the same kind of information. Finally, in August, mentors will select students. It's up to mentors, but they usually request interviews, and they might also request additional materials like a portfolio. Finally, by the end of August, beginning of September, students will hear back from the mentors about whether they've been selected, and projects usually begin right after Labor Day. So one of the things that we've been saying a lot in VSFS this past month is that virtual internships they've always been important, but now more than ever, we are finally seeing how important and valuable that they can be for all students across the country. So we encourage you to visit our website at vsfs.state.gov to check it out, see what the projects look like, get a feel for it. We have some really handy FAQs on that website, and it completely walks you through how to do a USA Jobs application. And also, if you have questions that you think of later after this presentation, feel free to email us at vsfs@state.gov.
That was a terrific presentation, Abby. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
You have to unmute yourself to ask a question. Let me just hop in there for 1 second, which is that when, Abby, can you go back to your shared screen and one of the slides with VSFS information?
Sure. Which slide?
Oh, anyone that has yeah, that's fine. For a minute here. When students apply, so one thing that you can do right now is to encourage all students to register on usajobs.gov, as Abby said. And it does take, it's kind of, once you get yourself through that, you deserve a job, since it takes an hour or 2 or 3. And it's tiring, but it's worth doing, because then you're forever in the system, and you'll get many, many opportunities come your way, from pathways, internships that are paid internships, to all the incredible variety of government jobs across the United States and around the world. So it's worth every student building a little resume. You have to build it inside USA Jobs. You can't download it, or upload it, which is the aggravation of it. But once you've done that, then you're ready to really select the vacancy announcement, the VSFS vacancy announcement that pops up on July 1. If you could, it would be a favor to your students to encourage them to apply early in the month. And we tell mentors on August 1, so students can only apply in July. So from July 1 to 31, they can apply. On August 1, they will get a confirmation a note. When their application goes through, they can see that it's gone through. So if they don't get that confirmation, something's gone wrong in the way they've handled it. On August 1, mentors get the list of the students who have applied to their projects, and that's when they begin sorting. So in August, we encourage all the mentors across government to review and to pick their favorites and to absolutely interview. When the information is sent over from USA Jobs to the VSFS site, it's sent over without reference to university name, so that students really are on an equal playing field. If you're at a community college in Oklahoma, you have the same chance of being looked at as somebody who's a graduate student at MIT. So the personal statement of interest is the most important piece of the application process for VSFS. Having a student explain why he or she or they want that project and will do a good job at that project over the course of an academic year, that's the most convincing and I think most important piece of the application. We have had numerous students who have done such a good job that mentors want to stay engaged with that student for a fall and an additional year, and certainly want to be the one who then recruits the student for employment. The other day we were on a webinar with a group of mentors, and one of the mentors was an a former VSFS intern. We have statistics showing that recruitment is happening from students who have had a good performance and a good record for an academic year in VSFS, being recruited from across the interagency. So stories from HHS, a story from IHS, the Indian Health Service that Abigail just mentioned. When they joined VSFS, they hadn't ever tried it. They tried it 3 years ago, and the Indian Health Service was having trouble really recruiting and making sure students across the United States knew the need on Indian reservations and knew the need for the many jobs that are focused on Native peoples. And now they have successfully recruited a pharmacist from their very first VSFS class. So what you're doing here is building internships for students, but also you're opening doors for them that will lead to professional employment. Now, please, if anybody'd like to ask a question, unmute your mic and go for it.
I see we have a few questions in our chat, so we're going to start with those. What makes students competitive for these opportunities? Nora, would you like to take that one?
Sure. In each of the projects are, when you can see them, well, you can go to vsfs.state.gov and look at them. You can see that they list the skills and the languages required. So what makes a student competitive? In the personal statement of interest, the student will write one personal statement of interest that expresses their reason and their desire to take on all three of their selections, so that personal statement of interest is viewed by all three mentors in three different projects. It's in that what makes a student competitive is to have the skills and the language that the project requires. And I would say arguably that the student has a passion for that task or a passion for that agency. The Department of Agriculture intentionally, they market to, or they encourage the land-grant universities. They direct the land-grant university students to look at VSFS because they have professional project employment possibilities there. Also, the department, the Office of the Historian at the State Department works closely with universities that have graduate programs in history and archival studies and taxonomy, because their opportunities, their projects are quite unique and very valuable for students who are doing graduate work in such subjects. I think, is there anything else you'd like to add, Abby, before we move on?
No, that sounds great.
When it says, can you share more about what to include in the portfolio? I don't think when the student applies, what's most important is that personal statement of interest, why they've chosen what they've chosen. It would be helpful if you could guide your students to, we made an important effort last year, and we're going to do it again this year, that we have a fellow who's on our team who does, we call him the data shepherd, and he reviews each week to see how many bids have come in for each project. If a student puts a name, selects a project that already has 200 bidders, obviously there's less likelihood that student will be selected. So you could guide your students to look at those projects which appear underbid, and then their chances will go markedly higher. When you say what to include in the portfolio, I think when the student, if the student is selected for an interview, then that mentor will get in touch with the student to say what sorts of things they're looking for.
As for the portfolio, that would be in the later part in August, once the mentors have started looking at the applications. If the project is for something graphic design based, the mentor might ask to see a portfolio in that case. But in general, once a student completes the application and submits it, that's it. They don't have to worry about anything else unless the mentor asks them.
I see that Dagmar has asked how long the projects last. VSFS is designed to be a long-term engagement, so the course of the academic year. That's because many universities also view VSFS, it's very project-driven, so it's not make work, it's real work. And offices and teams across the government appreciate and need student excellence, energy, talent, skills, frequently skills that they don't already have in their own team. At this particular time in history, every office across the government understands the need to build their virtual capacity. So students can take a leading role in helping their government get better at how we have to become better at this virtual capacity building. How to become Abigail, who's running this right now on Google Meet for me, is clear proof that our team is stronger because we have Abigail on it. And every government agency feels the same way right now. So that project lasting the academic year is because many universities, the Citadel, MIT, look to VSFS for a real internship that has a real result and is real work. Lastly, I see Randy wrote, will the mentors complete evaluations which require for the student to gain academic credit? Absolutely, they do. And many students, the credit question is nothing that we take on, but students take that question on directly with their registrars and with their universities and with their professors. And if it's the case that a student can get credit for whatever task that they have been selected for, then the mentor is happy to complete any evaluation and any other paperwork that the university would require. Is there anything?
So Gigi, I see there is a question asked. So the student applies to the general VSFS opportunities, but they should indicate an interest in a particular project or type of project on their interest statement, or do they apply to each individual project? Nora?
When the student goes to the site, so Gigi, when all the students should register on usajobs.gov, and they should do that now. They should do it soon, so that they're ready and they mark their calendars on July 1. They go into USA Jobs and they'll select the VSFS vacancy announcement. That VSFS vacancy announcement will then kind of throw them to our site. And on our site, it will become clear to the student that the student is permitted to pick 3 projects. The student will pick 3 on the site. And then there's a room for the student to write a personal statement of interest. In that personal statement of interest, the student will explain why he or she is interested in each of those 3 and is qualified to take on each of those 3. We have had students in the past who haven't been excellent at the skill set required, but wish to be, or are studying to get better at this. So particularly in, I'm thinking of there was a student who wanted to become better at data analysis and was taking a course very specifically in which that course needed a specific project, an internship project, and the student argued in the personal statement of interest that they weren't excellent yet, but through their class and through the academic year, they would be excellent and would do an excellent job. And the mentor picked that student. So this is an opportunity not just to do things the student already knows how to do, but to do things that will allow a student to improve or to make progress in their field of interest. We've had students take over when U.S. embassies are shut around the world due to war or disease or crisis. We've had students undertake the work of public diplomacy in embassies. So a group of students who speak Arabic, native Arabic speakers, and even some students who came from immigrant families but whose own Arabic wasn't that great wanted to perfect their Arabic, and they took on a project communicating and reinforcing public diplomacy areas for the embassy, for the U.S. embassy in Libya when it was shut down. So there's students who speak Spanish from Spanish, immigrant first generation students who have worked for FEMA, helping money go from FEMA headquarters to the non-governmental organization, the NGOs in Puerto Rico, who were struggling to understand how to fill out the U.S. bureaucratic paperwork. So there is something for everybody. Over the last few years, the last two, we've seen a sharp increase in the number of projects asking for videographers and for graphic designers, particularly for online tools and websites and outreach materials. So we have an incredible, usually an unmet need in the last 2 years of students who are art majors and design majors. Anybody else?
Yeah, another question we have asks, are agencies able to provide disability accommodations to interns, i.e. meet needs when working online if they use screen readers or other adaptive tech?
We'd be delighted to make sure to accommodate an intern that is selected for a project in whatever way we need to do. I know that right now VSFS has an unusual, we are supporting unusually some urgent projects that have come in. And one of the project mentors is the disability, runs all disability programs for USAID, the Agency for International Development. And that project mentor is working specifically with students from Gallaudet who are hearing impaired students, and working with them specifically on that project. So every year we make it a point, every year there are projects about strengthening us as a nation and our role in helping other nations improve their own access and inclusiveness for folks with disabilities. And so you bet you we will do everything we can, and we will make sure it works well for that disabled student.
All right, another question. If the applications aren't shared with mentors until August 1st, why do you suggest they apply early in the month?
That's a good question. That's because every year we have students who write to me on August 3rd and say, I forgot, or I got almost all the way through the application, but it took me so long, I gave up and I needed to finish, or I didn't get the confirmation. Was I supposed to get a confirmation? And I have to say to those students, I'm sorry, because the game of this is you have to apply in July. And that means you have to have the confirmation come back in July. And sometimes students, when they begin the USA Jobs profile building thing, are so surprised it takes a while that they lose energy and stop. Or they get it done and then they go to the VSFS announcement and they are having a hard time making a selection of the 3 projects. So I'm only saying if they could start earlier, it's more of it ups their chances of having the energy to get it done in the month of July. Really, there's no reason. They, of course, can apply on July 30th. In fact, most of them do. And because most of them do, a number are always, a number goof up and something goes wrong for them at the end.
We also have, one of the attributes mentioned was that this opportunity was affordable. Will there be a cost to students to apply and participate?
No, there's no cost. It's free for everyone. And in the past, when everybody would actually like to pay students, but because the government is the way the government is, there's no, the reason that there's such participation from across government is that it's free. So there's no bureaucratic hurdles for any agency Every agency can participate, and they do. So NASA participates, and agriculture and commerce, the National Park Service, EPA, and these are offices all around the world and all across the nation. We had a conversation with folks yesterday from Custom and Border Patrol who are in the West Coast, and I forget who else was on that call yesterday. Somebody else was on the call from NASA, or I forget. There's so many agencies participating because they can't afford to participate. And students who show their desire to do real work for their own government and do a real job for an academic year are then considered serious candidates and serious recruits for openings when those agencies have openings. We've heard wonderful stories of mentors who've been so impressed with their work, like I'm impressed with Abby, that they would really go the extra mile to ensure that that student learns of openings when they come up, and that student gets the recommendations that will make all the difference. Anybody else? If not, Abby, maybe you want to wrap it up with just a last word about how folks can get in touch with us if they need to.
Sure thing. So thank you all so much for attending. If you have any other questions about VSFS, we encourage you to email us at vsfs@state.gov. I'll be sending everyone another email with the link to this recording, and another reminder that if you want to ask us questions, you can. We definitely encourage you to check out our website, vsfs.state.gov, to get a look for the projects, get a feel for the project, see what it looks like, take a look at the FAQs. All right. Thank you all again for listening in. Anything else, Nora?
No, that's it. Thanks all for supporting virtual interns and the idea of virtual internships. It's really important. Thank you so much.